Hello and welcome to another episode of My Neighbor's Hot Tub. I'm your host, Tristen Lee. Today with me, I'm very thrilled to have my good friend, J.P. Martin. J.P. Martin is a developmental neurobiologist, which he studies how the brain develops. In addition to that, he is also a fellow comedian and host of the Sundays Are for Science podcast. Today on the podcast, we get to talk a little bit about our mutual love of comedy. We also talk a bit about slavery as it is Black History Month. We also talk about the Holocaust and then human behavior. So in this podcast, I want to warn you that some of the content that we will be discussing may not be suitable for all ears, but nonetheless, we hope that you enjoy. Let's dive in. I'm actually, okay, if I'm being sincere, I'm actually, I'm super thrilled to be able to have you on and get to talk with you. Oh. Yeah, we could say we're live now, but like, okay, just keep it as cool as just having a conversation. But no, I'm really thrilled that I get to actually have you. So we just had a set. How'd you feel that your set actually went tonight? I thought it was dope.
What do I do with my hands?
What do I do with my hands? Anything. We're not shooting a video. You can do this if you want to.
Okay.
You could pretend that you're rolling dice. You know,
so
or you
basically
tell the kids to get off your lawn.
Pretend I'm jerking somebody off.
Yeah. My cat.
No, honestly my set tonight, I thought it went okay. Like it could have been better. I broke out a lot of old jokes that I hadn't told in a while to see what I was still good at telling.
Yeah.
And I found out that a lot of them I'm not good at telling anymore.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm glad you recorded because now I can go back and like tweak it and figure out what I did before that actually worked. So
because you were the one who actually like you kept telling me that like when I started, you just you record it.
Yeah.
And you're like, you got to record it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to do it. And I never really saw the value in it until you recorded it and you showed me. I was like, oh, okay. Then there's things like that I'm aware of.
Yep.
You know, too. Like even Troy came up to me last week and he said, he's like, you know, you laugh at your jokes. not like in a bad way, like, you know, there's a stigma about it. But no, when you like you laugh at your jokes, he's like, you have to, if you give the audience the time to laugh, then, you know, if you're laughing along with them, that's different. But if you like laugh instantly at your own jokes, it kind of looks weird. And he was like, he was right.
You know what's almost ironic is Troy Lee does that. Like he laughs at his own jokes, like to no end. So that's a bit ironic, but definitely good advice.
Even he said it too. He's just like that he was aware of it too. He's like that was one thing that I was aware of. He was telling me he's like I was aware of that I was doing that kind of hindered some of the bits that he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, rewinding back a little bit. So you do stand-up comedy.
Yes, occasionally.
Occasionally, when you're not being a brainiac scientist.
Or beating my dick, yeah. Can I say that on here?
You can say whatever you want.
Yep.
Dude, you could say anything.
Yeah, you know, like it's hard to talk about yourself. You know, like when people ask, tell me about yourself, it's like, what the fuck do you want to know? Because, you know, you want to know about the crippling depression or you want to know about,
Some might feel inclined to be like, yeah, like they can talk about it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I always hate that question, especially in like interviews. But at least in interviews, you know kind of what they want to know about. They want to know if you're like a good employee, if you're fucking...
That's not what this is here. I'd hire you for sure, but like... I would never run anyone through those kind of like generic ass questions, but like more so I can kind of like guide you. Like what got you into doing the comedy?
Mm-hmm.
We could start there since we have that in common.
So what got me into doing comedy is actually an excellent question because I remember when I first decided that I wanted to do stand up. Yeah. And it started out kind of as like a bucket list item.
Okay.
Because
you knew you were gonna die soon. Because
pretty much, Black people don't live to be 39 years old, and so I was watching Kevin Hart, Grown Little Man, and at the time it was the funniest shit I have ever seen in my entire life, and I just remember laughing so hard at it and thinking it was so funny, but at the same time, it was the first time I watched the stand-up special, and I thought to myself, I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because the way I like to describe it is like when he sewed the blanket, like you could see the seams. You know, like he made it to where, because like, you know, like Dave Chappelle, he tells these really outlandish stories, and Chris Rock, he's really good with the politics, and you know, and so it was finally a comedian who just talked about regular shit, and like he made it hilarious. Yeah. You know, and so I was like, damn, like you don't have to have all this fucking formal comedy writing education and all of this stuff to be good at telling jokes. Like you can just talk about shit that happens every day and tell it in an entertaining way and then make it funny. And like I was like, I want to do that one day. And so I remember just having that in the back of my head. And from that day, so I started writing jokes that week, right? That was in 2000, maybe like 2008 or 2009, right?
Yeah.
I didn't get on stage until 2018. 2018, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I was writing jokes that whole time. Like I was writing as if I had a show coming up. Like anytime I would think of something funny, I would just write it down and I would just ponder like where I could go with it and stuff like that. And I never really stopped. And I remember one day I was living in Fargo at the time and I was working at this company, and one of my coworkers, Marshall, I was talking to him and he was like, "Hey, what are you doing tonight?" And I was like, "Nothing. Like, what about you?" He's like, "I'm going to a comedy open mic." And I was like, "Wait, what? They have that in Fargo?"
Yeah.
And like he's like, "Yeah, like I just heard about it and I'm gonna go check it out." And I was like, "Hey, you mind if I come with you?" And then he's like, "Yeah, for sure." And I was like, and he's like, "Are you gonna go up or are you gonna watch?" And I was like, "I haven't decided yet." You know? And so like that day, I remember I didn't even go to my notes to figure out what jokes. Like I wrote all stuff like when I was leaving, I was like, okay, I have like 5 hours when I got off work until the open mic started. Yeah. And I was like, I'm gonna try to write a joke every hour. A minute worth of joke every hour. Yeah. That day. And so I sat down and I wrote like just the hackiest shit you've ever heard in your life. And it was there was a joke that I did and I thought it was hilarious at the time, and now I look back on it and I cringe. But I was like,
is it a Holocaust denier's joke?
No. Okay. That's fresh. but yeah, so the joke was that I was gonna sit down in the audience all night and I was just gonna steal people's jokes. And then it was like, oh, I had this epiphany that I'm going to be telling the jokes to the same audience that heard the fucking jokes the same night. And so that was the punchline. Like I thought that was the funniest shit I have ever heard in my life. And I told it and people actually laughed.
That's actually pretty kind of clever. It's ballsy.
It's not
ballsy, but it's like that's the joke and you realize that.
Yeah. It was terrible. But people laughed at it, so I was like, maybe I'm good at this shit. You know what I mean? And so I went back. But now I look at videos from back then, and it's so fucking cringy. Like, it's like I hurt inside when I listen to my old shit. Even when I listen to some of my new shit, I cringe. But, you know, I think the thing that gets me through that is the fact that, you know, like watching different comedians on their podcast and on other people's podcasts, and hearing them talk about how they still feel like they suck. You know what I mean? Like to hear freaking Nate Bargatze, who's like one of my favorite comedians. He like, I fucking suck at this. Like, and I was like, damn, I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Yeah. There was one I was listening to. It was Mark Maron's podcast, and he had Louis C.K. on, and he was talking about Louis was talking about how he idolized George Carlin and how every year Carlin was fucking next level
incredible
shit. Like, dude, every year or so, like he would he would throw away all of his material.
Yep. Start
and
fresh.
start fresh. And that concept, even to Louis, was just like, he's like, I've been doing the same material for years.
Yep.
And he's like, and it's barely getting live. You're telling me I have to scrap that and start, but it got you kind of thinking, and even being at the cellar here in Fargo, like just watching some of the other comedians do it.
That's it's most things
Chase
in
Rader.
life. Yeah.
Fucking A, dude.
Most things in life
excellent.
are like that, where it can get stale. And that's why a lot of people recommend like life coaches and shit like that. People who pay to jack other people off. But they always recommend like you like start new habits, coaches. Like you throw things out and you try to change up your routine because
Marie Kondo that shit.
You get so caught up in the same pattern that you don't experience anything new. And you don't get new ideas by doing the same shit. Mm-hmm. And so there was some logic in like throwing away all your shit because it's like you're going to be so married to the idea of these jokes that you have, that you've gotten laughs with, that you've toured with, that you've gotten paid for. Mm-hmm. And you're so married to those ideas. And I find this with myself too, that you don't want to change anything about it. And that's one problem I have with writing jokes. Once I do the joke one time, I don't want to change it because it's terrifying. Because like if you change it, what if you change it and it's not funny? It's not the end of the world, but this is like just the anxiety of like being like, it got a laugh, so let me just leave it the way it is. Or it didn't get a laugh, so I'm never telling it again. And like I don't have a middle ground when it comes to that. Like I'm literally like, I'm never telling that joke again. Or I'm telling that joke the same way every fucking time.
Yeah. I've even tweaked after much thought and even conversation with you. Like I've tweaked some of the jokes that I had. Where like initially I had it one way, and then I approached it from a different angle. Where the concept was the same. Like the joke that I had, like I recently got Disney Plus, and I was watching the live action Lion King. Yeah. But I watched it when I was high on like edible, and it made me think that Disney actually taught animals how to sing.
By the way, is that a true story?
Yes, but
what part of it is true? Because like I know how bits go.
The true story is that when I first started, I told the story of how I went out to Portland, Oregon. To visit a friend, and this is the actual story. And I got off the plane, and I went and got to a restaurant, and I kind of toured around Portland, because my friends were still at work. And one of the places I went was this library, and I toured inside the library, and I left the library, and I just went walking down a street, and I walked past this building, and it had a giant green plus sign on the outside of it, and I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, kind of like peeking my head in, kind of like looking around. And there was this fucking dude sitting behind this desk, this like really nice formal desk. And he's like, hey man, how's it going? And I said, good. Is this a dispensary? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, you want to come in? You can come in if you want. And I said, sure. And I pulled out my ID and I showed him. I was like over 21. And he's like, from Minnesota. What brings you out here? I told him why I was out here. And he's like, all right, well, I mean, everything checks out. You want to come with me? We can go into the back where all the goodies are. Right. Just left the front desk. The door's wide open to the place. We go back into this room that's no bigger than this podcast room here.
See, first of all, there's a lot of holes in the story because that is wild. Like nowadays, like I've seen dispensaries and they have like armed guards. So the fact that they're that lax in Portland, like everybody should be flocking to Portland right now. Yeah. But okay.
They do. That's why there's so many homeless people. This was before COVID. This was before all that shit. And so we go into the back And I'm kind of like looking around. He's really like helpful. And he's like, so yeah, what are you looking for, man? Are you looking for like, some flour, you could like smoke, or are you looking for like edibles or vape or what? And I said, I'm actually edibles, let me see what you got for edibles. And he's like, all right. So we got these cookies, we've got these brownies, and we got like these gummies, these little gummies.
So going in, did you know what you were looking for? Because had you been high before this?
Yeah.
Okay. So you knew what you were looking for when you went in?
I knew. Okay. I knew about what I was looking for, but I didn't want to smoke. I don't like smoking. I don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel. And to be truthful, I don't even fucking do weed anymore. Just because I like being awake. Like my drug of choice is Benadryl, and that's it. That just helps me fall asleep. And that's it. Have weird dreams.
Yeah.
But no, I went in. And I was like, yeah, I want an edible. I want like gummies. And he showed me like what he had. And there was this one, it looked like a gum pack, right? And there was like 10 of these little like square gummies, these cubes in it. And I was like, what's that? And he told me what it was. And I said, well, how much is in each gummy? And you got to ask that because
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, there's like, I think like 5 milligrams in each of them. And I'm like, that's not a lot, because in weed story truth, like I've had a gummy that was 125 milligrams. And
hold on. I don't even, that means nothing to me, but 125 seems like a lot.
No, that's the thing. And you look at that, you're like, that's not a lot. Tylenol is like 650 milligrams. You know what I mean? Like
I gotta default to my weed expert.
Yeah.
I don't know. That just is that a ton? Is that a lot?
What?
125
We're
milligrams.
consulting our weed expert or in-home weed expert.
I'm not a weed expert.
Let me just put it in perspective. 125 is a lot.
Yeah, that's what I feel like that's deadly. Lot. That's lethal. That's the lethal dose.
Have you ever seen those like chocolate bunnies? Those giant. That's huge. That's how much this giant weed gummy was like. It was like a gummy person. It wasn't like a sweet and sour candy. It was.
I'm gonna have to Google that because lethal dose of THC. Because you shouldn't be talking to me right now. I don't feel.
No, it changed my temperature. It changed my core temperature. But anyways, I've had gummies that were like upwards of like 125 milligrams. Yeah. And my dumbass ate 2 of them.
Jesus Christ.
And that's, you go insane. Like you kind of go insane, and I can have you talk to someone that can vouch for me about how insane that is. But no, I was in Portland, and I ate 5 of these 5 milligram weed cubes, these little gummy cubes, and I didn't think anything of it. And I called my friend, and I was like, "Hey man, are you done with work yet? I was thinking about going and seeing a movie." And he's like, "I'm not done with work yet. I got a couple more hours. But there's a movie theater right down the road from where I work. Just come up to Vancouver and you can go there." So I did. And then the weed kicked in right as I got to the movie theater. And I started to get paranoid. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be high. It's illegal. But it's legal out there. So I was still paranoid. And the guy, checked my luggage because I still was carrying my luggage and everything was cool. Didn't do a good job of it because the weed gummies were sitting right fucking there.
Right.
And so I go in, get my popcorn, get my tickets, get my drink, and then I go in and sit in the movie. And when I tell you, there was that moment where I lost the control of my brain and the weed had full control. It was right when in that movie the sun comes up over the Sahara Desert. And it's just, I was gone, dude. And I was so high. I was actually convinced that Disney taught animals how to talk and sing.
Oof, that's wild, man.
That was wild, man.
Yeah.
So that's the true story of it.
Right.
And then I shortened it to, I went and got Disney Plus and whatever. Because imagine me telling that would take up my whole 5 minutes at the cellar for one maybe good punchline at the end. Fuck that. Disney Plus, and I don't even have Disney Plus, so that's a lie.
So you're a fraud, basically.
I'm a fucking fraud. I'm a hack.
No, I had Disney Plus for a while because I got it free through the Verizon, but I never fucking watched it. So
yeah, I got that through mine. I got HBO Max, but I hardly ever watch it.
Through Verizon?
I got it through AT&T. So they got like different deals, you know what I mean?
They're still doing that?
Yeah, they're still doing the HBO Max. If
Oh,
you
no,
have
I mean,
AT&T.
are they still doing AT&T? Is that still a thing?
Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild.
That's wild. I know, right? I think Verizon is definitely better.
Oh,
actually,
100%.
well, is it? I think it's like T-Mobile has the best 5G now.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know anybody with When I find somebody with T-Mobile, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I talked to my dad. He has T-Mobile. It's Sprint. When they got bought out by T-Mobile, he just kept Sprint.
Yeah.
So he has a carrier that doesn't even exist anymore.
Oh, yeah, I guess Sprint. Yeah. Technically, you could still have your Sprint phone and your Sprint plan underneath T-Mobile or whatever.
That's the one way to do it.
I only know people with Verizon and Straight Talk, like the very top and the very low. There's no in between.
Y'all remember? Do you remember like Virgin Mobile? Like that was a phone.
Is that not a thing anymore?
I think it still is.
Yeah, he's going to space. And
he's
shit.
going to space technically.
He's got money to go to space. He's making some checks.
He got money to go to space. Bezos has money to tear down a historic bridge.
I don't know anything. When you were talking about that earlier,
you didn't know anything about
context.
that.
No.
So that'd be like one of those jokes that you have to like explain the fact that like Jeff Bezos has a yacht that's bigger than anything. Like it's probably as big as like an aircraft carrier. If I were to imagine, it's fucking massive.
That's too much yacht, though.
That's too much yacht.
Look, I don't know what the lethal limit of a yacht is, but like...
If it's enough to land another aircraft on and have another yacht inside of it, then that's too big.
It's too much.
That's nonsense. And
But if you were a billionaire, like what would you splurge on? Like what would be your... Like what's something ridiculous that you probably would get?
Well, I know myself now, and when I worked in him, I would just like really good food. You know, like I know it sounds stupid and like cliche, but like, dude, I can't even fathom how much it'd be. If I were to try and be real, I would be like Bernie Sanders' wet dream because I would be like giving it away. Yeah, I would be like I would be using it to build other things. But like if I could have like one thing that I could like splurge it on, it would probably be like the best food.
That's the equivalent of like if you ask somebody what's their favorite position and they're like missionary. Like that's what that just sounded like to me. Like what would you get if you had all the fucking money in the world? I will weigh 700 pounds. Like that's basically what you just said.
Like I fucking would too, man. I would go to countries or like places where it's like they have like endangered species, and that's what I would eat.
Just fucking. I don't even know any endangered species, but now would be the time.
Yeah, like just like shit that you could never fucking possibly eat, like Siberian tiger, you know, the last giraffe,
fucking Bengals.
like what I would do is I would have meats. Like woolly mammoth, actually. Like if you think about it, like if you could unthaw woolly mammoth and eat that shit, I'm bullshitting right now, but like now I just got on the topic of thought about something like that. Mm-hmm. That's probably what I would do.
That'd be. I feel like you would do more than that. You don't think you would, but you would do. You would do some wild shit.
I can't imagine it, so it's like hard to.
You would do some wild shit if you had $1 million.
That's like asking a colorblind person what's their favorite color, and they're like, I can only see 3. So
that's
like,
a good analogy.
Example. Like,
that's not a bad analogy.
If you could have $1 million bajillion, what would you? I'd buy everything.
I redact everything I just said.
Think before you speak.
Reclaiming my time. How ridiculous was that?
Actually, you know what I did find out? In the spirit of Black History Month, I actually found out that the richest man in history, like...
Oh, yeah. I know who you're about to say.
Muramasa. Muramasa.
Yeah, Mensa.
Mensa. He was the king of the Mali Empire in Africa. Years, thousands of years ago. It was just a long time ago.
Right.
Before even like European started kicking off before at the time of like before Alexander the Great, before any of like these people, he was running shit,
right?
Because he had access to like discovered all of the like huge concentrations of gold in Africa, and with that he was able to amass a wealth equivalent to like Bezos and Musk and like all of them, their companies combined is what he was worth. Right. And so then what he was able to do with that is he went and built infrastructure like schools and roads and stuff like that. And then was able to like educate the people of his empire, to a level. Unfortunately, what ended up being his downfall was he had died, and then his sons lost total like control over the empire. And then I think
this is basically the Sam Walton story from thousands of years ago.
That's
history
true.
does repeat itself.
That's true.
History does repeat itself.
I think he would probably have been cooler than Sam Walton. what ended up happening, this was crazy, is his sons shortly thereafter ended up having to resort to selling off like slaves and their own people in order to it was this whole triangular of awfulness, but that's what ended up totally like dissolving the whole Mali empires. They started forsaking their people,
right? And
you can't fucking do that shit.
So because I have a question, and it's based off of like what someone told me one time, but I feel like everybody thinks that they're somehow different from everybody around them, right? Like we all like to think that we're different from people around us, but I wonder sometimes like if we were actually put in situations, like how we would actually react. And there's a reason why I wonder this, but I want to ask you, because one of my white friends, like we were talking, and she said that she feels as though if she was alive during slavery, she would have been one of the people that was like buying slaves and then hiding them, or like freeing slaves, or like advocating for the abolition of slavery. And I think it's an interesting perspective because this person only votes one political party.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And so it's like I have trouble believing that a person who just blindly follows a political party will risk their freedom to free like livestock. You know what I mean? Like that just seems like a very like as a white person, like how do you feel like, do you think that you would have had slaves? And if so, like, what kind of slave master would you have been?
You know what? In the spirit, in the same way that how you asked, like, what would I have been like, or what would I do if I were a billionaire? I think it's really hard to imagine yourself in that sort of a situation. So it's funny to me that you tell me that this friend of yours would say that kind of thing. One, because how could you know? You never grew up in that kind of that era, so it sounded like she was trying to get some virtue signal points at some point. But that's fine. And you know what? In her defense, what it could have been is she has this. You have the sentiment to do the kind of things that you would.
Right.
Me. Oh Christ! I've never been asked a question
because think about the fact that one, it was socially accepted. Like it was just how it was. The slaves accepted it. The masters accepted it. The people who didn't have either accepted it. Yeah. It was legal. It was the thing. It was custom.
You know what? I'll answer this as truthfully as I possibly can.
Right.
I'm thinking back to like some of my even recent ancestors and stuff like that. Is like we were very, very poor farmers, and what we ended up having to resort to was, when times came around, we had to go and work factory jobs in the cities. So I feel like I wouldn't have owned slaves, but I would have thought to myself, damn, it sure would be nice if I had slaves. So I would have probably...
That's an honest answer.
Like I could never afford them. Man, it'd be real nice.
Man, it'd be really nice.
I would be really nice. I'd be like, thank you so much.
Right. Which is so honest.
That's the closest I can answer.
I'm glad you could be honest about it, because it's like with everything in life, it's a slippery slope. Because like, think about the fact that it's like, you would think about it, but then it's like, if you have the money, maybe you would do it. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'll do it, but I'll be nice to my slaves. You know, they'll sleep in the house, they'll blah, 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 you know.
Yeah.
But then you get the slaves and you're like, shit, this harvest is fucking lit this year, you know? And we might have to pick all through the night, you know? And then, like, before you know it, you're whipping the shit out of your slaves, you know? I just feel like everything in life is a slippery slope. And we should look at everything in that way, you know?
Right, just like you get a little bit of a taste of something.
Yeah.
And you're just like, man, you know, like, this would be really nice, you know?
Right, because nobody ever thinks like that they'll be the worst. You know, like they never think that they'll get to that level, but they don't realize that it happens like one thing at a time. Like, nobody just jumps to being Hitler, like who never existed, by the way, and like just start killing Jews who also never existed.
Yeah, you don't go from 0 to 100.
No, like, but it's like, maybe you fucking kick a Jew once, you know? Like, but I'm joking, but like, the point that I'm getting at is, I listened to a lot of like podcasts, and one of them is the Jordan Harbinger show, which you might have heard of. But yeah, he's like a lawyer, and he has like all these interesting people on, and a lot of them have some questionable pasts, right? And the common theme among the guests is that, because he meets people who were like hitmen.
Oh, yeah.
Who have killed like 19 people, you know, or lost count of how many people they killed, or they embezzled billions of dollars from governments or companies and stuff like that. And the common theme is that they never thought that they would be there. Like, you know, they would have never, but it just like one thing at a time. And before you know it, you're like, holy shit, I've killed 5 people. You know what I mean? And I think the powerful thing about that is that it shows how careful we have to be as people. Yeah. Because it's like, me personally, for example, in my own life, like, one thing that I can point to is the fact that, you know, like, a person who will remain nameless. Yeah. But the only thing that I'll say about this person is, he's my dad. And so, like, he has this wife who, let's call her my mom. And so, and like, he, throughout most of their marriage, he was unfaithful. Right. And he's had like multiple kids outside of wedlock and stuff like that, outside of his marriage and stuff. And I just remember being a kid, and like, once I was able to understand, I was like, that's terrible. Like, you're horrible for doing that, right? And then it's like, fast forward, and like, I'll have like a girlfriend who I'm in a committed relationship with, and I'm just like doing the same thing that my dad was doing. And it's like, I just remember waking up one day and like, how the fuck did I get here? And then you start retracing, and you're like, damn, like, you kind of can't really judge somebody or a situation until you've been in it. You know what I mean? Until you've had the opportunity to do some self-reflection. Because I heard a guy once say that the only difference between us and Hitler is degree, right? And so he says that Hitler just made it more down that slippery slope than we have, because absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And so really, we're all just separated by how much power we have to be able to do something.
Yeah. I actually have an interesting thing about that is when I was working in like as a CNA, like, you know, before I became a nurse, there was a resident that I had worked with at this particular nursing home that I was at, and she had actually met Hitler when she was a child. She grew up in like the Austria-Hungary, part of Europe that it was at that time. And what happened was she had Hitler and his troops had like come through, and he had went around and he was like, doing the thing that like politicians do, like where he would go around and like shake people's hands, kiss babies,
kill a couple Jews.
Thunder kick a Jew. But in the meantime, and she was like 7 or 8 years old, and she remembers very vividly him coming up and like patting her like on the head and like shaking her father's hand and stuff like that. And she told me, she's like, I knew then that he was a piece of shit.
Really?
Like it was something that everyone kind of knew. It was a weird thing that was kind of went through at that point. She knew neighbors where they were Jewish people, and they just were gone. One day like they just came and got them.
The most striking thing about that was that I thought for a second that she was gonna humanize him. Like he's coming through, he's shaking hands, he's kissing babies.
Yeah, and
that would almost make more sense to me, because like we have a tendency to rewrite history. Like when we know the end, we tend to go back and fill in. And so that was interesting that she felt like at that time, which I believe her.
Yeah.
That,
the thing I kind of had to like take away from it was, even at like a young age, you kind of have this notion, what's right, or what's off, and what's wrong. But what she remembers telling me, or what she remembers it feeling, was that it just didn't feel anything like outside normal. You just didn't talk about that. You just didn't, say, why are our neighbors gone? All of a sudden, it was just part of what was part of that culture when she was coming through here. So she didn't, she knew obviously that he was off. There was something off about him, and the whole situation that had transpired with him taking, her neighbors and what was going on in Europe at that time. They knew. There were like gossip, they didn't have Twitter or anything like that going on, but they had like that hear tell and, hearsay, like this is what's going on. Mm. And they just kind of stood by because they didn't think anything of it, or they were worried that if they said anything or did anything, they would be in the crosshairs.
100%. And that's the only law, self-preservation.
Yeah.
Like,
so when going back to like what your friend said, like she very well might have had that notion now, saying that she would be the person buying slaves and like protecting them. Right. But you don't know what you'd be fucking thinking. If you were, now harboring those and you were caught.
Because I'm fascinated by this field of psychology. Yeah. And it's called behavioral economics.
Okay. Yeah.
And
talk about it.
It's basically there's this behavioral economist that I follow. His name's Dan Ariely, and he wrote this book, and it's about human irrationality. Okay. And he made me fascinated by how irrational we are as people. And so the common theme in it is that my dad just texted me.
He knew that you were talking about it. He's like, you talking about
shit,
me?
Motherfucker.
My ears are burning. What the
fuck
you doing?
Like 10 bitches.
It wasn't me.
Right. But yeah, no, so this idea. So essentially what it is he puts people, we have this preconception that if I was in this situation, I will react like this. Right? Mm-hmm. But we take the human element out of it. And he talks about how simple supply and demand also takes the human element out of it, and how the market is flawed because it assumes that we're good at making decisions. And the idea is that we're not good at making decisions at all. Like we think we're good at making decisions. And because we overestimate how good we are at making decisions, we end up making bad decisions, right?
Yes.
And not only do we make bad decisions, but we repeatedly make the same bad decisions because we think that we're so good at making decisions. And so he unpacks it, and basically he talks about how we think that when we're in a situation, we're going to react a certain way because there's no passion when we're not in the situation. Like we're just cool and we're rational. But the truth is, when we're actually in this situation, our emotions take over and we do irrational things, and we're no longer thinking with our rational brain. And so he was saying that we need to be able to account for, okay, I am going into this situation, like, let me make provisions for my own irrationality. But we can't do that if we don't recognize how irrational we are.
Yeah. And the thing of it is too, it's like, when you're in this headspace where there is no outside stimuli, there's no risk, or there's no danger of, intervening in between, what decision you're going to make given the circumstances, you end up having a totally flawed, belief and execution of how you're going to handle a situation. You'd probably be thinking a lot different if you were asked, how would you judge a situation if someone was holding a gun at your head and telling you, what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do? Like, I'll give you just even a real example. Like, there was a fire. It was at my at parents' house. Their fish house had caught fire. There was a battery shortage, and caught the insulation on fire. It was bad, and it was right next to their tree. And next to the tree there was our dog's kennel, and then my father's bobcat. His skid loader thing. And what ended up happening was this fire, like, it took off. Like, there was propane in the little, like, propane tank in the actual fish house. And as a reaction, like, my brother sprinted to save the dogs, not considering, the fact that the fire is blazing, at them, and didn't care about his own safety. Just split decision. That's why, like, when there isn't a fire, they tell you, don't go in after someone, or don't try and save anything, get away, get to a safe spot, and this was stuff that we had all practiced and planned. We're going to get as far away from the house as we can. We'll go down by the basketball court. We'll call 911, yada, yada, yada. And then the reaction of it was my brother ran to try and save the dogs and get them away from the fire. My dad got into the skid loader to try and get it away because it's full of diesel. And if that explodes, we're losing the house, and it's even a bigger problem. So he goes to try and do that, not realizing that all the stuff inside is boiling. The seat was boiling, the grips, the hands, the metal was boiling to a point where, like, when he had to do it, he drove to get it away, and he got burns on his hand and on his back and stuff like that. So he thinks about it after the fact, and he's like, that was a bad decision. What was I doing? What was I thinking?
Right.
And that's because you were put in a situation you didn't foresee. You didn't plan for that specific kind of a situation, just like a general fire. You're like, we're going to get the fuck away from it. Right. But no, this is a different situation. I got to react accordingly. I got to make quick decisions. And a lot of times it's wrong. And that affects even go in, further into like the stock market.
Oh, yeah.
What happened when the pandemic had, everyone sold their stocks.
Yeah.
Everyone, fucking panic. Everything hit the floor.
And the smart people bought all those stocks.
Smart people bought because they sat back and they'll go,
it's going to come back. Yeah. Even the airlines, like one investment that I recommended everybody I knew, I was like, invest in the airlines. Yeah. And they're coming back. Yeah. And sure enough.
Yeah. And that was always one thing. My dad had worked in the airline industry, and he had said, you always know the gauge of how well an economy is doing by how well people are using air travel. If it's doing well, there's a lot of air travel. There's, stuff like that. He still has buddies that like work in that industry, and if it's not doing well, and the economy, everything's sort of connected.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know, one thing isn't going to affect one, you know, directly, but the one thing that does affect it is the human behavior.
100%.
Yeah, that's fascinating that you bring that up.
Dude, like I'm obsessed with human behavior and human irrationality. Like, and I wish I could remember some of the experiments that they did, but they basically, what they do is they go around and they ask a bunch of people the same questions, and then they see what people say that they will do.
Yeah.
And then they go around and they ask a bunch of people. I meant to, they actually put a bunch of people in the situation that they asked the other group about, and they find how different, like it's completely flip-flopped from what they said they were going to do and then from what the other group did. Yeah. And so it's like, it begs the question, like, would this group probably have done the same exact thing that group did? But
yeah.
Dude, I wish I could remember some of the specifics of those kinds.
Like the names of the tests. There was one test I remember learning when we were taking, it was like kind of like a behavioral psychology, but like psychology in nursing school. There was a test where they had done, they had like 5 people, you know, in this particular test, and 4 of them were in on the test. So they knew what the fuck was going on. And then the one dude was a rando.
Right.
You know, he wasn't aware of the test. And within the premise of the test was they had, I think it was like 3 different lines on a whiteboard or like on a chalkboard or something like that. And the question was, they were just asking these 5 people, which line is the longest, A, B, or C?
Right.
And clearly it was like C, right? It was like by a huge margin, it was C. And then the first 4 people who were in on the test were like, it's A. It's A. They said like 4 times, 8, it's A. And by the time they got to the 5th dude, who was a totally unaware participant, he went along with what they were saying because he didn't want to feel ousted.
Right.
So he was just like, A.
Yeah.
It was the behavioral psychology of like, he didn't want to stand out and be part of like the group.
Yeah.
Part of the psychology that actually goes into why a lot of people turned a blind eye to what was going on in the Holocaust, because they were just like, I just don't want to be the different one saying, hey, this is fucked up, you know, even though it didn't happen. I mean, you know.
Which is actually very interesting.
It's a joke.
Just for the record.
It's a joke.
To all my future employers. The Holocaust did happen. A lot of people died. Most of them Jews. And now they own television companies. Yep. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
But no, like, I think you bring up a very, very good point of like groupthink, right?
Yep.
And that's a harmless example.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's scary to me because I understand the implications of it. But to most people, it's kind of funny, kind of, you know, like interesting, but you don't see the danger. Like, you don't see the danger because from an evolutionary standpoint, think about this. If you look at animals out in the wild, the ones that stick out get eaten, right?
Yeah.
Or the ones that don't have a tribe, don't have a pack, they get eaten.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you think about our ancestors, nobody wanted to be the one that stood out. Nope. Because then you're alone by yourself. You have no strength in those numbers. And so it's like, we have evolved this propensity to not want to stand out. Like, we want to do everything everybody's doing. We want to wear everything everybody's doing. Nobody wants to be out of uniform. Nobody wants to stand out. Nobody wants to speak out when it's not. So think about how right now, if you were to say that love is love, everybody should be able to marry whoever they want to marry. Yeah. That's popular now. So now everybody will say that. And you almost won't find anybody that, you know, like, you'll find people, obviously. Yeah. But like, you almost won't really find anybody that'll be like, oh, I think that the Bible says, like, you know, like, but like 30 years ago, like, if you said that gay people should be able to get married, like, you were the person that was standing out, and so nobody was saying it. And so we kind of evolved in that way to where we don't want to stand out because the one who stand out get eaten.
Yeah, and it's truly a detriment to us as a species and us as a society, like to like you like you want to like say something, stand out and say, hey, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
But if you do,
and you think it,
you get chastised. You know what I mean? Like yeah, you're right. Like in your head, you're like, this doesn't seem right or this seems wrong. And that's, that's fucked up. But like if I say something, then I'm at the crosshairs. I'm at the mercy of the crowd, of the group, of, the clan. And then now you can't have your, happiness. You can't pursue what you want to do and be happy because you stood up for someone else, because you said something was whack and now you're whack.
I'm completely convinced that it's just by pure luck that my ancestors didn't get eaten. Because ever since I was a little kid, I never wanted to be like everybody. Like I always sometimes I would do stuff just because everybody else was doing the opposite.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was just like this romantic idea of not being like everybody. And I would dress different from everybody. And sometimes people would make fun of me, but then sometimes it would catch on. And then like I would say different things. Like if everybody was like, that car is awesome, I'd be like, that car is trash. Like
just
almost
like the ultimate devil's advocate.
Almost annoyingly so. But the older I got, the more it became refined, and it became like I have this ability to look at the bigger picture in a lot of situations. And I think it makes me realize that we're all being forced into this like bottle. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like everybody's like, you have to like the same things. Like if you don't like the same music that I like, I'm mad. You know what I mean? Like if you think
you're
my play, exactly. Like and
you're them.
We can't even have differences anymore. Like if we have differences, all of a sudden we can't be friends. Like I'm gonna unfriend you. Like I've had people unfriend me because we don't have the same idea. Never mind like on politics, because I don't fall left or right.
Yeah.
But if we don't have the same idea on a specific issue,
then that's the pivot point where they pivot the fuck away from you.
Yeah. And so I think it's really dangerous because like we're all being like, look around. Everybody's doing the same stuff. Everybody's wearing the same. Everybody's watching, listening to. Like they're pushing music, and I'm like, you're almost taking away what it means to be human. Yeah, because like this individuality is so profound. Like we've developed this over fucking decades, millennia. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like and now we're being forced to all be alike. And some people realize they're like, I don't really like Cardi B. And then it's like, but fuck, like I can't say I don't like
Megan
Cardi
Thee Stallion.
B. Yeah,
she's a badass motherfucker. I could give a shit about Cardi B.
But you almost can't even have your own individuality anymore.
And what happens, what's forcing people, it's forcing people to be a disingenuous version of themselves. Right. It's not allowing you to be, an honest, version of yourself. Here's the reality of it. You're going to have people who like you for you. Yeah. Flaws and all. Yep. And you're going to have people that don't like you, for you. But it should be based on several different like personality points, behavioral points, not just one particular point. Like there was a and you're right, it does end up getting and affecting the way that we think, even on an individual level because of the crowd. Like I was talking with my dad, and we were having fun, and we were playing a game, the Cards Against Humanities. And if Cards Against Humanities, it's just a box of white and black cards that like they just have like ridiculous shit set on them, and like if you pair them up, sometimes they have like a really funny or really fucked up thing that's set. Yeah, and there was like cards that we would play. This is ridiculous, and my dad's like. He's like reading. He's like, I can't read this, man. This is nonsense. But it got me thinking that even when I brought up, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, it was like, he was like, what can you say? What can't you say? And I was like, I mean, obviously there's things that you can't say, for, you're ruining somebody else's reputation. You wouldn't want to like do that specifically, but like also on a rant, you wouldn't just for like an hour just say the most awful slurs that you could possibly say either. So I'm like, there are things you can and can't say.
Oh yeah.
But even on a simplistic level, like I've had people say that like I'll never go to a movie theater by myself. I was like, why?
Yeah.
I'll never go watch a movie in a theater by myself. Why? It's just weird. It's just too weird. And you're like, is there a rule saying you can't? Again, that people just don't want to feel ousted.
Dude, that's so funny that you say that.
And that's a simple matter. You know what I mean?
It's so funny that you say that because a lot of those rules I like to go against because like I start realizing how stupid they are. But it's like, I remember the first time I ever went to a movie by myself. And I remember I kind of felt a little like a loser. Like going a little bit
initially,
but there was also a part of it that was a little romantic. You know what I mean? And so,
especially when you get to jerk off in the theater, there's nobody else.
It was a full theater, so I didn't get to do that.
Man.
And I don't think I've ever done that in my life. But that's also to my future employers.
Yeah.
But they would give us these movie vouchers at school.
Yeah.
And usually I'd hit up one of my friends like, hey, you want to go to the movie, blah, blah, blah. And this particular year, all of my friends had graduated and they had moved on and stuff like that. So I didn't know anybody. Yeah. And so I heard they had movie vouchers and I was like, well, I really kind of want to see this movie, but I don't really want to go by myself. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, maybe it would be nice to just go by not even tell anybody, just go. And so literally I went and dude, it was transformative. Like it felt so.
Did you see the Transformers? Is that I'm teasing. No. Transformative.
I would never. But
it's just trash.
I would never support anybody that would do that to a Camaro. But no, like it just felt nice, and it felt like there was something like almost spiritual about it, to where I felt like I felt more in connection with myself. Like I wasn't looking to the side to make sure anybody was enjoying the movie. I wasn't thinking like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like I just was enjoying the movie. I wasn't thinking about anybody but me at that time.
Yeah.
And it was something like so pure about that to me.
Yeah. I totally feel you. Like it was one of those things that like, you like those weird like social things. You're like, it's weird to go to a movie by yourself. It's weird to go to a restaurant by yourself. But then when you do that, you're like, this is the shit. Why do I feel like I have to, get other people to do this thing, that I would normally, do at my house by myself anyways. If I were to like, I make food by myself, I eat by myself.
Yeah.
I don't need someone else watching me validating that I'm doing something. I can just go do that stuff. It's freeing, and it's really cool, because then you're just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna go to a movie. Fuck it, I'm gonna go food. I'm not gonna starve and diminish myself. Right. Enjoyment.
It's funny because I'm not much of a drinker, but I romanticize the thought of like being a regular at a bar. Like just come in by myself, drink, tip the bartenders, and then leave. Like I don't know, there's something like cool. I at least want to do that occasionally. Like I don't know.
Would you find you're like a more like extroverted or pretty like introverted kind of a person if you were to rate yourself?
I'm ambivert. Yeah. There's times when, and most people, if you ask them, they would say that I'm an extrovert. Because like I talk to everybody and I, like whatever. But in all honesty, there's
middle.
times where I'm like, I'd rather not see people today. What I mean? And that's most days. Not most days, but that's like 50% of my days, I would say. And then other times I'm like, I need to see people, So
like I've talked with people, like I've had friends that are like clearly one way or like clearly the other way. Like I have one friend who he kind of lives in a small town by himself.
Right.
And that's what he does. He'll like go to a bar, but like he doesn't like just fucking staying at his house. He was able to work it out and figure out how to, be cool with just being at home by himself. But like, he's such an outgoing person that he's just like, I want to go and be around people. Like he feeds off of like being around people.
Right.
I'm the opposite way. Like I enjoy going and seeing people. Like I come out to comedy, I like, going and being at work. When I'm at work, I enjoy the people that I'm around, but like, I'm totally at peace, when I'm just chilling by myself.
So, because I wonder if you're similar to me in this way or
I think
not.
we're more similar than you realize.
Because the way I feel is it's like, for example, like I love being by myself, like a lot. But at those times when I love being by myself, like for a strange reason, it doesn't include like if I'm with my girl,
yeah,
I feel like in a way she's an extension of me, and it's like I'm by myself. You know what I mean? Like
it's as peaceful
as if I'm by myself. And I wonder if that's just me or if like you feel that.
I would say for me is like when I'm around people that like I truly enjoy being around, because like I'm similar in the way where it's like I like by myself, like I can entertain myself, I think a lot, when I'm by myself, I'm creative in doing shit, by myself. I'm able to stay motivated and do stuff that I want to do even by myself. But like when I'm around people that I truly enjoy being around, like you, like some of my, close friends, it's not a hindrance. It's like a bonus to life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where it's, like I've been in relationships where either because I had to like change myself or like adapt, around a person, either to feel liked by them or to make them feel like they needed to like themselves. So you had to adjust accordingly. And it fucks up like your inner chemistry in a way when you're off a bit, when you're doing stuff, that you wouldn't normally do, or when you're not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's kind of peaceful to be alone. That's where like I definitely lean that way, where it's peaceful to be alone. Or I prefer being around people that I actually truly enjoy being around, where I don't have to change shit. And that was something that it takes a while to like be able to get, where you're just like, I don't need to be around, these people.
Especially being a comedian, it's like, because there's times where people always expect you to be funny, and they always expect you to make them laugh, and which I love doing. Yeah, but there's sometimes like, and I don't have this problem as much now, but I remember I did a lot in high school, because like I was the comedian guy, and I was always like playful and funny, and like people saw me as this extrovert, and it got to a point where there was nobody I could have a serious conversation with. And for someone who was, like most comedians, struggling with fucking crippling depression, and everybody thinks I'm this jovial guy, and and I couldn't have those conversations with anybody because they just expected me to make them laugh. They expected me to make them feel better. They would tell me their problem and then expect me to make a joke about it and make it all feel so small, And I don't have it as much now, because now people are surprised that I'm a comedian, because like I'm a lot more serious than most comedians now. And people are like, I thought you were a comedian. Say something funny. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
To like just always be funny. But then also it's like, a lot of times I don't have anything funny to say. Like, and if I don't have anything funny to say, like unless I'm talking about the Jews, I'm not gonna force it.
What Jews?
Like,
I do feel you. Like, in a way, I don't know if I've ever really like truly believed that I had depression. I don't think I do. I definitely, had shame about dumb shit that I've done, a handful of them. But what I would do, I would deliberately use comedy as a means of like putting up a wall, because I didn't fucking really want you to know who I am, because I didn't think people were deserving to get that close. It was a weird like defense mechanism. That was something that I actually realized right around the start of when I started doing comedy, where I would use humor. Like, I couldn't have real conversations. I would always be looking for like something funny in a conversation. I could never have just a real conversation, even with like friends who like, knew me. Like, I joked around and I could be real, but like I would always try and find a way to spin it in a joke, or like if something was like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'd always try to lighten it up by being funny. Like, I grew up where there was always tension in the house, parents fought, often.
Yeah.
Like they're good. They're like together and shit, and they're fine. But like, you'd always have that. So you always had to be, try and like ease the tension either, as like an older brother, or like as a son, you just had to like keep everything cool.
Right.
So yeah, I'd always like hide behind, comedy, just, as like a means of like, hey, this is like, like women put on makeup.
Yep.
That was like my makeup, and that was like my mask.
It's so funny that you say that, because I had a very similar experience as a kid. Like my parents, they weren't really shy about like fighting in front of us, which is, it's fine, whatever. But I turned out okay.
Yeah.
But
switches.
Like, there's this song, and I used to be ashamed of it, but there's this song. It's called "Smile." It's by Tamia, who's an R&B songwriter from the 90s and early 2000s. But the song is basically what you're saying. It's like, I put on my makeup and then I put a smile on my face, and if anybody asks, everything is okay, right? And then it's like, and I'm like literally dying inside, right? And so I feel like in a lot of ways that was like my whole life, like literally. And when I heard that song, it was like, I was ashamed that someone's talking about putting their makeup on to hide like what they're actually feeling. I'm like, I don't wear makeup, but like that song is hard as fuck. Like,
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, like it's weird to be, it's weird that people don't care about each other. To me, like not even weird is the right word, but it's heartbreaking to me that people don't care about each other, because we live in a society where everybody's so absorbed with themselves, and many times it's not even really with themselves, but they're absorbed with
what's their going on.
Yeah, the instant gratification that they're receiving. Yeah. Like, that's all we can think of. That's why people can watch TikTok for 7 hours straight. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's because we're almost absorbed with ourselves, but we're absorbed with that quickness, that fucking distract me from everything thing, to where we're not even taking care of our human needs, like our needs as humans.
And weirdly enough, too, like I remember in a interpersonal communication class, there was this. It was like, I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was like kind of like the fallacy, like being the stage. It was like being on stage, even though you're not on stage. You in your mind think that everybody's looking at you, how you're dressed, how you look, what you say. Like, you have this fallacy about you thinking that everyone's, like absorbed and clicked like onto your shit. But in the reality of it, they're just as concerned about what's going on with their shit, that they don't have time to look at you. So there's this mad disconnect between the reality that we're all, like you say, kind of absorbed with our own thoughts and our own shit, a lot of times because, I mean, that's just all we have, like, to think about that's in our head. We don't have the means yet to step beyond, thinking about someone else. Like, hey, how's their day going? You know what I mean?
Right.
And when we don't take care of that, or we distract ourselves with, endless streams of like TikTok or endless, like video games or like things that are pleasant distractions that distract us from our own insecurities, that distract us from handling our own business. We don't have nearly the mental energy to try and begin helping and thinking out for like others.
Right.
So it's valuable for us to figure out ourselves, but in a means of trying to get to a place where we can now help others,
right,
where we can now give a shit about others,
right,
what they go through, what they think, without the buffer and the bullshit.
What you said is actually one of the things I credit with like changing my entire perspective on life, right?
Yeah.
Because like I was very, very fortunate that I took a psychology course in high school.
Yeah.
And that course changed my life in a lot of ways. One of the ways was exactly what you said about how we basically think that everybody is obsessed with us. Yeah. And the reason why is because we're obsessed with us. Yeah. And so we assume that I had this thing stuck in my tooth. Everybody probably was noticing it the whole day. Like my two reds on my top and my bottom don't match and people are looking at me weird and my eyes are too close together. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we are so obsessed with ourselves that we project that obsession onto other people. And we think that other people are just as obsessed with us as we are. But in reality, they are obsessed with themselves too.
Yeah, my shoes are too tight.
Yeah, they're thinking, oh, do they notice that my shoes, or like secondhand or, and so when I found out that people are not as interested in you as you are, that completely changed my life because I became way less self-conscious because I used to be a very, 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 very self-conscious person. And to an extent, I still am, but not nearly as much as I used to be. And so I started realizing, like, you can pretty much be yourself because nobody gives a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, and not only that, but it's like the people who do give a fuck, if you're not yourself, you're going to attract fucking vultures. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to attract people who are looking for you to be that person that you're pretending to be. Yeah. Right? And that's exhausting. And so what you have to do, if you're not yourself, you're never going to find your tribe. You're never going to find the people that are like you because they won't see that side of you. And so they won't be like, oh shit, like you fucking, you know what I mean? You do this too, or you think about that too, or you fucking like Lord of the Rings, or you like, and so if you never are yourself, you're never gonna attract people that make you feel like you can be more yourself. Yeah. Right? And it's a terrifying thing to let somebody into your bubble because it's like we have this idea that we're unique, back to the point from earlier. Yeah. We have this idea that no one is like us. Yeah. That and so anytime I have a thought where I'm thinking like I must be the only one, like I try to write something about it. I try to write a bit, I try to write a poem, I try to write something about it because I'm like, one day I'm going to perform this and I'm going to find whoever else feels like this. And if you never are yourself, you will never find the people who feel like you. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. This will be part 1 in a series of 2 podcasts that I will be releasing with JP, so stay tuned for part 2.